Bleh, I want to suck your bleh.
Sinners tells the tale of the Moore brothers Smoke and Stack, who have returned to Mississippi after living the criminal life in Chicago. Freshly flushed with cash and liquor, the brothers buy the local sawmill with plans to turn it into a local juke joint. But what's a juke joint with no music or food? So after deciding that tonight will be the grand opening, the brothers split up, with Stack gathering the music crew and Smoke handling the food for the night's festivities. Stack recruits their baby cousin Sammy, a talented blues guitarist with aspirations of music fame, who happens to catch the eye of the beautifully talented singer Pearline, and also recruit Delta Slim, a veteran blues piano player, to make sure the juke joint is hopping. But things become complicated when Stack's old flame, the white passing Mary, realizes he is back in town. Meanwhile, Smoke grabs food supplies from the local shop owned by Grace and Bo Chow, longtime friends of the brothers. Smoke then reaches out to his ex-lover Annie, where they reconnect over a tragedy that drove a wedge between them, but hopefully having Annie be the cook for tonight's celebration will help heal old wounds. But just as the pieces fall in place for a celebratory homecoming night, a mysterious stranger named Remick, who isn't quite what he seems, decides to crash the party, leaving only one important question lingering in the air: who will survive the night? Sinners is one of the best films I've seen in 2025, and depending on how well it does, it could lead to a change in the Hollywood system, something I'm sure is scaring the crap out of the studios. So here are 3 lessons you can learn from Sinners. Usher in the new. So if you haven't noticed, Sinners is an original film from Ryan Coogler, and I'm going to emphasize the word original, because if you haven't noticed, in the last decade, we've been living in a nostalgia-fueled, IP-driven version of the entertainment industry. And don't get me wrong, nostalgia in and of itself is not necessarily bad. Sometimes it is important to make sure that you go back to your roots and learn the foundational lessons that you and a current generation have built upon. Sometimes those ways can be forgotten, but there is a problem, especially in the last 10 years, of the way nostalgia and known properties are the main driving aspects of our pop culture, especially in terms of our storytelling. And there's a really big problem with that, because that does when you have so many things from the past, or the trying to copy things from the past and recreate them being the leading cultural movers, is that it actually leads to a stagnation in culture. I'm not sure if y'all have been feeling this, but for the fact that we are in 2025, doesn't it feel like we as a culture and as a society should be moving forward, or have gone somewhere further than we have? Like, I remember someone said something about our world right now, which is in the 21st century, it feels like we are just seeing the 20th century, but just in HD. And so there is a thing about why originality is so important, is because with a movie like this, original movies and new things lead to new ways of thinking, lead to new ways of looking at things, and just opens people up to the possibility of something new. So if you want culture to move forward, one of the biggest ways is to make sure that pop culture in and of itself is providing new original ideas and stories to tell people, to open them up. Now, I know there's going to be some people that when they know the story of Sinners, they're going to go, this is not that original. But then that leads me to the next lesson. Lend an intersectional hand. In following Ryan Coogler's career, I think one of his main superpowers is the fact that he is someone who is intersectional, right? I think ever since the first Black Panther, he has shown himself to be somebody who is aware of the fact that our world is multicultural and multifaceted, and has made sure to imbue this within his work. Just like with the first Black Panther, the subtlety of the tension between African Americans and the African community, you know? And he has continued to do that, even in Black Panther 2, where he took it a step further by making sure to reach out a hand to the Latino community and bring them into the Marvel universe. And I think with Sinners, he does it again, where he is reaching a hand out to the Native American community, he's reaching a hand out to the Asian community and the Irish community in a story where he didn't necessarily need to do that, but through his research, you know, taking the time to do that work, imbues his movies with more layers, right? The initial story of Sinners, it's something that we've seen before, but by adding this intersectional lens to it, he imbues it with people that we don't normally see in these contexts, and subtleties and tensions that we don't normally see, which makes me think of the way that this actually imbues the movie with more aspects to it, especially when we talk about the villain Remick, which leads to our next lesson: the power of horror. Horror is one of the best genres that humanity has ever created. We are a race that it is a universal thing to feel fear. But in particular, what horror stories allow us to do as humans is to take the subtleties and the various parts of our culture and turn them into something tangible that is easier for humans to deal with. When we are dealing with internal feelings of fear or systemic or societal problems, we as humans have a hard time dealing with those things when they are not externalized and made made physical, which is something that horror allows us to do. And one of our oldest and most endearing symbols is the vampire. So slight spoilers here. The character of Remick is a Irish vampire within this movie. And within this character, I believe that Ryan Coogler is actually using it to explore a bunch of subtle tensions within our society. So with the character of Remick, he is an Irish vampire. And I particularly say Irish vampire because the movie makes a point to not just code him as like vaguely European. He has a distinct background that he is coming from. But through this Remick character, we are exploring various ideas. And I think one of the biggest ones that the vampire has been used before is this idea of capitalism, of greed, right? To the point that there's another movie that's come out that I think typifies a way to think about capitalism.
I am an appetite, nothing more.
But also through this character, I believe he is reaching out to white people, and there's gonna be a lot of white people who see this movie and they see Remick and they see this white person as the villain, and it's gonna make them uncomfortable. Apparently I've heard white people have been walking out of this movie, but I think they are being too sensitive here. He is actually trying to take a fairly empathetic look to white people and saying how that through the aspects of colonization, one is that you as white people, you are not just white. White is made up of European, and Europeans have distinct cultures, right? You have Irish, you have Italian, you have French, you have British, and I'm only naming a few of them. But through this system of America and white supremacy, you are being reduced down to a different culture where you trade in your distinct individual European cultures for a kind of blanket general whiteness.
American dream is actually whiteness. Whiteness functions as a cult, and you actually don't have to be white to be white. The definition can be changed to accept new people. German, Italian, Irish, some Jewish people. The definition of whiteness has changed over and over again to accept more and more people. They've been accepted into the Church of Whiteness, and the baptism required to cross the threshold of the white picket fence requires you to cleanse yourself of certain cultural markers in your identity. Whiteness is just the process of replacing your culture with consumerism. Cultures are real, and the cultures of Europe had been infighting for a millennia. Flip side is that as people get closer and closer to actually being accepted into the cult, they crave more and more the things that they left behind at the altar. And that is where the fetishization of Black and other cultures comes into play.
And how that affects y'all in certain ways. One is that it makes it where y'all culturally feel a hole in your chest. That when you look at people of color and you look at their culture and you feel so drawn to it, that part of the reason is through this effect of colonization and capitalism and white supremacy, there's a hole in your spirit, and that you feel the culture coming from these other people that you have lost. But then with Remick comes with this other aspect of, even though you are a people who have possibly been colonized, like Remick has here because he is Irish, so with the Irish they were colonized by the British, that even though this pain and this colonization has rendered you cultureless in a certain sense, it does not stop the fact that you will replicate the very harm that your people have suffered.
Hurt people. Hurt people.
So with Remick, he is a cautionary tale for white people in particular, but for any colonized people, to be careful about the way your pain takes you into certain directions, and the fact that as Americans, there is too much of an emphasis on hyper individualism and its power that it may delude you into believing that you have enough power to overthrow a system by yourself, but you do not, and that these systems are way sneakier and may infect you and make you create the very harm that was done to you and your people. So please be careful. But with that, I want to say, have you seen Sinners? And if you have, please tell me what you think at the bottom. Unless of course you disagree with me, because I don't like that.